and so I had a stereo in my car before I could drive.
And how many years ago was that?
Too many. 80. Oh my gosh, probably.
Did they have cars back then? Was that
yeah, like 84, 83, 84.
All right.
And I was into audio before that, so it's been a long sickness.
Mark, you were early. What year was your?
I started driving in '78, and had my first vehicle. It was a '74 Chevy Blazer. I got it late that year, and first thing I did. I put in some Pioneer 6x9 dual cones and the TSM2 tweeters up on top of the dash. Nice. And I bought a $50 underdash 8-track tape player that was just kind of mounted under the dash, obviously. And that's what I had, Led Zeppelin and the Who and the Stones and all that stuff on my 8 tracks. It was a jamming system.
Nice. Nick, welcome. About what year did you start in car audio?
75, 76, something like that. Trying to remember. I think it was 76. Now that I'm thinking about it. I was 16. Yep. Ignorant, stupid, didn't know any better. Oh, well.
So what's changed?
Say no shit. Not a damn thing.
We're all that way. Here we all are in our 50s and 60s still talking about this stuff. So.
Yeah. Hell, Mark and I are still working in the industry.
I know, yeah. I'm working tomorrow, heading down to Oklahoma City for an event down there.
I got a webcam work. I got a WebEx to do tomorrow, and I've got something to do with the Canadians, and I'm like, it's going to be a fun Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Nick, I don't even know how it's possible you get better looking when you get older, but I'm gonna be honest with you, you're looking pretty damn good.
Randy, severe drinking affects your brain, brother. So I'm just telling you. And speaking of, here we go, right here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, brother. Thank you. Really do.
I haven't seen you in forever, my man. It's probably been 4 or 5 years. Obviously, Facebook is one thing and social media is another, but I don't think I've actually put my peepers on you in a few years.
Yeah, well, nobody has in the last year plus, except for Doug.
That's why we're here. We got to remind people what we all look like, because
I think the last live group of people next to Doug and Anjali that I've actually sat down and having a conversation with is probably Klifton back in May in Atlanta. At the hybrid show. Yeah,
we do better than that.
I saw Nick in the vaccine line.
Yep, Doug and I were in the vaccine line Saturday afternoon. God bless him.
Doug, I think the last time I seen you, honestly, was your car? I remember sitting in the BMW, and I want to say maybe 04. Either SVR or was Kansas City. I think Petraka's car was there.
I took it to Kansas City, which
that was it.
Yep.
That was the last time I showed it was Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's the last time I've seen you. So however many years that's been, that's the
either
last
that
time.
Or I thought I saw you at a there was like a Knowledge Fest or something in Dallas.
Oh yes, you're right.
Because Floyd Toole talked at that. And so I drove up to Dallas to say hi to him and a bunch of friends, and that was the last time I've seen a lot of people.
Dude, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. That was the last time I seen you.
Or when did I meet y'all in Daytona, Nick?
Oh gosh,
because I was in Orlando for a conference.
2009, 8, somewhere around there.
Other than that, I only go to Pate's show and to the Heat Wave, and then when Klifton threw a show a mile and a half from the house, I had to go over and say hi at that. But other than that,
it'd be rude not to, right?
Yeah. If it's a mile and a half, I can make it.
How do I get Doug to come out? I know. Pro show at Doug's house. That's
right. Now I will say this: if you come down for Texas Heat Wave, I always have a party at my house the Saturday night of the show. So there's a standing invite for that. So, that's how I see most of the people in car audio these days. Is I have them over on that night.
He's got to throw a party. And
Nick, I lied. I said that you look better now, but I'm going to be honest with you. I think Jeff Smith.
No,
he hasn't
I'm
aged.
way
Yeah,
better
yeah.
looking
Here's
now
the
than
guy
he
that
has
has been
longer about the damn day. Is Jeff Smith.
I don't think he's aged a day. I think
No, he's gotten younger.
Satan I think he's made a deal with Satan because I think he actually getting younger.
The Jeff Smith time thing, it works over years as well, not just
Special effects.
So is it like reverse dog years for Jeff? Like he aged 4 to his 1?
Yeah.
Is that how this works?
That's funny.
Trust me, I've definitely gotten older.
Jeff, around what year did you get into car audio?
I got into the industry. I got into the industry August of 1990. My first competition was July 2.
All right. Randy, what about you?
It would have been 90. My first taste of car audio would have been 94. And my first show, it was a USAC show in my backyard, basically. It was a couple miles from my house. And I want to say my first USAC show going was probably 95 or 96. So
I'll call it around 94-ish was when you kind of,
yeah, 94 for me. And then from getting my feet wet, and then 94, 95, somewhere in that time for my first show. That was it, man. One show, and I think everybody here can agree. I think once you just experience it and walk onto a parking lot, it's a life-changing event, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was.
See the red trophy in the background up here?
Yeah.
I just noticed that's my very first trophy. It was second place in Longview in '92.
That's the only one.
It's the only one I have at the house. The rest of them are at the shop, but that one's here. So,
How about hearing George Reed tell you how bad your system sounds? That was interesting.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that immensely.
the man who can't hear anything anyway.
Yeah.
I met George.
Actually, Mark,
The first
did
time
you
I
ever
met
have
George,
judge a vehicle using his handheld RTA only?
yeah, the first time I met him.
Yep.
It was in College Station. It was like 1982.
Yep.
And Kyle Davis, my roommate, and I were driving around, and we were in College Station at A&M. We drove over to Bryan to the car audio store to get some speakers. And in the parking lot across the street was a bunch of cars lined up, and we're like, what's going on over there? I said, oh, that's an SPL contest. We're like, what is that? And we go over there, and there's George with his handheld Radio Shack microphone thing measuring cars in 1982. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was the very first time. And there's an old saying, about car audio. This is the only sport where you spend 8 hours cleaning your car, 25 hours tuning your car, to spend the next 6 hours waiting in line for somebody to take 5 minutes to tell you how bad your shit sounds.
And just keep coming back.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? Truer words have never been spoken.
And you know what it does? Well, but I think there's another layer to that, because then you're going to spend a good weeks or months afterwards feeling really bad and butthurt about something. So there's like a wound after that I think obviously lasts a lot longer than the show.
Yeah.
It
But
could.
it makes the highs high, though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it does. And, honestly, we all do it to make our cars sound better and to share that experience with other people. The shows, for me, for about 5 or 6 years, the shows were it. The sound was just to get a score. And then I got real again and figured, it's about the sound. The score is just incidental. And it just, sometimes you have to get back to the real world and say, I I don't care what the judge says. I know what my car sounds like. I just want to share it with people. You know.
So one of the questions I'm going to pose, and I hope we get a few more of the people on, because I mean, obviously we have a great group here, but what was that aha experience, whether it was in your own vehicle or that time when you sat in somebody else's car and you're like, either this is my utopia, this is my benchmark, I understand it now. Like this, I may not be there personally, but I at least have something to strive and shoot for. We'll go around, with Doug, with Nick, with Mark, with Jeff. What was that for you guys?
So mine's really easy. So I first started out getting exposed to people with 6x9s and an amp, right? And I thought that was the aha moment. But then when I was 16, so I grew up in Arlington, Texas, and the big thing in Arlington was to go cruise Cooper Street. And so 16, get in my car, get my friend, and we're heading down Cooper Street for the first time. And I'm driving by, and going the other direction is this hearse. And there's a spectrum analyzer in the window, and it pulls over to a car wash, and I pulled up and was like, well, there's a lot going on here. And that was Wayne Harris's hearse, because he lived in Dallas-Fort Worth and would come over and cruise Cooper. So I saw that, and he had an Apple II computer in there and some 24-inch woofers and all this stuff. And my imagination went crazy. Like, number one, how's he running an Apple II? I didn't care about the stereo. I want to know how the computer got in the car. And then he had, a home audio equalizer in the dashboard. Well, that doesn't run off at 12 volts. And, there was all these things, and I'd kind of see that. And then I would, go to shows and see other cars. But, my first exposure literally went from 6x9s and prefab boxes to seeing that hearse and going, okay, there's a lot of things you can do. I need a TV in the dashboard. I need a video VCR in the car. I eventually did. I need 24-inch woofers. Haven't had those yet. But, all these things.
Give me time.
Give me time.
One of these years.
One of these years. Looking at all these different things, that was something that kind of triggered my thought process, going, okay, this isn't just add a couple of speakers. You can really go off the rails. And my mind's kind of wired that way. If it's something that I think is really cool, I'll go right off the rails with it. Didn't have the budget at the time to go after, but had the imagination to kind of like, okay, how do you do this? How do you run a computer? How do power supplies, how does all this stuff work? And then, would work and save up some money and go try it and light something on fire in my own car. But it was a great learning experience. There was all these shows I went to. I didn't know what I was doing. I never got trophies. Did horrible at them. But then I would figure out, okay, what makes it better? But also, that's a really cool thing to do. And I'd get sidetracked by, I want to have a Nintendo in my car, or a Sega Genesis, or both, and that was eventually I had that too, but that was kind of my thing. And I figured out the audio stuff along the way.
Mr. Nick, what about yourself?
The very first time, Randy, is that what we're going for?
Well, just the aha. What was that? That's not necessarily the first time. I would say that the thing that made you go, well, now I need to think things differently, or maybe I have a benchmark to strive for.
I think the benchmark, the aha moment, it had been, fun, putting speakers in cars and amps in cars and 6x9s, and like Doug said, doing that routine. But I think the very first time that I went, you know what, there's something completely different and better out there, is when I had the chance to listen to Kimura's Acura. The very first time I heard it.
Really awesome.
That I sat in that car and I went, okay, I get it. Yep. My car sounds like shit up against this. And I have no business being in this. And I should probably go back to barbecuing or something like that. And there was that aha moment. And there's another one. It's when I also, and this was at 90. What was the first finals, ISCA finals in Dallas? 95?
94.
94, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, Mark's forerunner at Thunder on Wheels also was an aha moment for me, because Dale and I had an opportunity to sit in your forerunner.
Oh, I remember that. 94 down in Houston at the Astrodome.
Yeah, the Astrodome. Yeah. And I was like, for the love of God, listen to this. You know, the stereo wasn't in the truck, disappeared. And I was like, you know what? Yep.
Wow.
This person knows what the hell he's doing, and I don't, and I need to learn. And that's when we started talking and becoming friends. You know, and it was those two moments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was those two that I'm like, you know what? I would really like to have my vehicle sound something similar to this. And it's all Mark's fault. And you know, and as the saying goes, here we are today. But it really was.
Thanks.
And it became kind of the benchmark. You know, it was those two vehicles. And I know Dale will tell you the same thing. He just looked at me and he goes, I got to go home and tear the Thunderbird down and start all over again. Oh God.
Did that?
And he did.
Times. Yeah.
And he did.
Mr. Jeff, what about you, sir? What was that aha? What was, whether it be something you got to listen to or something you experienced? What was that? What was that, life altering in retrospect, but for our love of the sport.
So for me, I got my start like you and USAC, right? So
yep.
USAC shows were pretty plentiful where we were in Alabama when I first started doing competition stuff. And I had a basic system in my little Honda Civic. I thought I was doing the right thing, and imaging never made sense to me. Tonally, you got it. You knew when something was too bright, things like that. And I had probably 3 or 4 USAC trophies at this point in time. You worked at a shop, so you're automatically in pro, right?
Yeah.
So I'm, pro. I think it was like 251 to 500, and 3 or 4 trophies at home. I'm feeling good about myself. And then I go to this regional event. I've never been to a regional event before in Jackson, Mississippi, and there's 3 cars in my class, and all of them have Alabama car tags. And I'm like, why have I never seen these guys before? Who are these guys, right? I get 3rd place, last place. But that wasn't a big deal. I got a trophy, so that's all that mattered. I got a trophy, right? But then the guy that worked with me goes, dude, you got beat by 120 points. And I'm like, what? I never really thought about the point spread, right? And so I'm like, how is that even possible? And I recognized this one guy I had seen before, and I walked over to him and I was like, hey, do you know this other guy that's in our class? And he goes, yeah, he's from Montgomery. And I'm like, so who is it? He was like, his name's Jeff also, but I don't know his last name. I'm like, okay, cool. So I walked over to the car. He was demoing to a couple of different people, and I stood around, saw his trunk. Trunk was beautiful trunk, for Micah, the way it was back in the day. It's a big crunchy Q and 2 crunch amps in the back and big passive crossover. And I'm like, okay, I know my car was different, fuzzy carpet, speckled paint, everything in the back with some plexiglass. Thought it was cool. And I didn't get to listen to the car at the show, but about a week later, I'm at the shop we worked at, and the car pulls in the parking lot. And I'm like, why is this guy in our shop? Right? Who is this guy? Come to find out, the guy's name is Jeff Riles, and he's the local crunch rep. We didn't sell crunch at our shop. So he comes in, and I was like, dude, I introduced myself. I was like, I was at that show in Jackson, Mississippi, and you crushed me. And he was like, you were in my class? Like, who are you? Right? Like, I had no clue who I was. And I was like, do you mind if I listen to your car? And he was like, sure. And he takes me out to his car, and he's pro 0 to 100. And I'm like, you got 100 watts in this car? 2 Crunch 50s, right? Sits me in this car, and it's my car sounds nothing like this. There was imaging, staging. I mean, and I'm like, you have how many speakers in your car? And he's pulling door panel grills off. He's pulling dash grills off. And it's just like, I've wasted my life this last year. Like, what have I been doing, right? And we picked up Crunch after that, right? We only did it for a little while. But that was one of those moments that you understood that there was a different level. Like, you thought what you had been doing was killing it for your little area. But then once you saw someone else, and then Jeff turned me on to Alaska, he says, dude, if you really like this stuff, there's a whole nother group of people that don't really care so much about bass. They're more about the install and about how clean it sounds and imaging and all this stuff. And they really work the score sheet. And he goes, you should go over to Atlanta to the Hi-Fi Buy shows. There's tons of Alaska events over there. And I'm like, okay. So went over there, met a whole nother group of guys. And this is how I got introduced to Eldridge later on down the line with my guys in Anniston. I met this whole nother group of guys, Scott Harris and all those guys. And
wow,
when I got introduced to Alaska, it was 2 more light bulbs going off, because it was everything I had learned from the group of guys I was originally with. It was loud, plenty of bass, but imaging, staging, and truly the competition side of things, or just the audio side of things. It was literally like Doug said, you cruise around with your music loud. It's clear, but as far as where we are now and what we do, the competition side of it, the imaging, staging, and the purity of everything, it was a whole different ball game. So
Scott, you were late on the ad. The question was, what was that aha moment early on? That thing that made you question what you did. And Jeff just died right there. He's good. We're good. What was that aha moment? Whether it was an install, whether it was a system, whether it was a show, whether it was a piece of it, what was it that made you kind of rethink things?
So first of all, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We hear you fine, Scott.
So my aha moment happened about 3 or 4 years after I had started competing. So I was a little bit late. I didn't get the memo early. I had already won a Daytona Swing Break Nationals before I had my aha moment. I guess it was at the 94 Daytona show. And there's this funky BMW there with 12s in the kicks.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to go hear this car. And it was Earl Zalzmer's car. And it was the first time I heard a soundstage. And I had been competing for 3 or 4 years by that point. So I was like, what the hell have I been doing?
Yep.
That car blew my mind. Love it or hate him for what he did, the one-seat wonder, blah, blah, blah. That car from the driver's seat was doing things that I have never heard in them. I've never heard since, I think. There was 12 layers to the sound stage. The center was, you could pick the nose of the lead singer. It was fantastic. It was phenomenal. And I like all you guys, I went back and I went back to the drawing board and I said to myself, I got some work to do. So it was Zalzmer's car.
So for you guys, and obviously I'm overtaking, and I apologize, Cliff and Erin, but it's
you skip Mark, I think.
Oh, did I say Mark? Mark, I love you, buddy.
Yeah. Lots of aha moments. The first one, 1990, I was in pilot training, learning how to fly C-130s, and I got a copy of Car Audio magazine, had the RTA on the front, and I started reading. I was like, wow, okay, because I'd been into car audio for a long time doing my own stuff, and it's like, okay, cars, music, and competition, I'm in, and that's where the competition started. and I started learning and getting into it. Subscribed to Dave and Richard's, AutoSound 2000 Tech Briefs. And that's kind of leading to my big aha moment, because I went to, in Charlotte, North Carolina, they had an AutoSound 2000 seminar, and I drove all the way out there because I thought I had a decent sounding car, but I wanted to learn more. I had the USD horns up under the dash and all that stuff. And got out there, and the first day, went through classes. That night, they had the Grand National on display outside. And Ellen Smith, Manville's wife now, she was working for Richard. And she was in the driver's seat doing demos. And there's a line, I don't know, 30, 40 people long. And they were doing demos for like 2 or 3 minutes a piece. So it was quite a while. And then I got in and sat down with Ellen and said, "Hey, Ellen, I'm Mark. Just learning how to do this stuff. Yeah, I want to hear the car, but can you teach me a little bit about staging and imaging and evaluating sound quality?" And we were in that car for 20 or 30 minutes, and there's people in line waiting outside. And she demoed the car and explained things, and we're listening to all the Iasca tracks, in particular the Pat Coyle stuff. And for me, that was my real start in learning how to do what we do, And then after that, the end of the second day, we're in Charlotte, and it's July, right? So it's like 100 degrees, and it's 100% humidity. And I just begged Richard, said, "Richard, you got to come hear my 4Runner, because I've got the USD horns and all this stuff, yada, yada, yada." So we get in the vehicle, and he's in the driver's seat, and I'm like, "You want me to start it up so we can run the air conditioner?" He's like, "No, man, I'm fine." The North Carolina accent of his, and put on the Iasca disc, and he listened for about a minute, and then he turned the volume down. He said, "What speakers you got in here?" I said, "I got the USD horns up under the dash." He said, "Those ain't those horns." I said, "That's them." He said, "Those are the worst sounding horns I ever heard in my life." No lie.
Did he urinate on your seat at the same time? And
no, what he did for the next 45 minutes, he tuned my system for me, and he showed me what he was doing. And he opened the horns up, and he was, using things inside, and he was doing EQ and stuff. And that whole weekend is what drove me to do what we do. I mean, that for me was the epiphany. That was the beginning of where I learned how to learn. So there you go.
I want to add something real quick. We've been on for 27 minutes. Mike Minio's name has not been brought up yet. What the hell?
Give it time. Give it time. I mean,
you can't nobody say it 3 times, because then.
Is it like this is what it's like?
The ice is melting, guys. Hurry up.
Yeah. Don't even. Oh.
Hey, Erin. Let me 1 sec. Erin, when did you get into car audio?
I don't know, maybe 2002 or 3 with subwoofers, but like sound quality side of things, like everybody else lately, found the forum, do-it-yourself mobile audio, and I thought I knew everything because I read a bunch of people that knew everything posting there. Then I got an invite from Well, then I got an invite from this guy named Kirk Profit. He said, "Hey, I'm in Huntsville. I'm like 30 minutes from you. I'm having a get together at my house this weekend before we have a big, I think it was Alabama State Finals." And he invited me out. And I was like, "Sure, I'll go." So I went and I actually took a friend with me so I wouldn't feel weird because I didn't know anybody. I mean, this is the first thing I went to with any sound quality cars at all there. Jeff was actually there. I don't know if you remember that. That was like 2007, maybe 2008. And you remember Andrew?
Yep.
What was his? Andrew Smalls.
Yep.
Andrew Smalls was there. Yeah.
Was Hogan there?
Hogan was there. Scott Selvage was there.
Wow, I've heard Scott's name.
Matt Roberts was there. Oh gosh, who else was there? Who?
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh yeah, you're right. Anyway, long story short, Kirk said, "If you want to demo a car, you can demo mine." His TL, first SQ car I ever sat in. It's been game over ever since, man. I mean, he played one of my favorite songs of all time. He played "Money for Nothing" and he cranked it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is incredible!" And I went home like fired up, and I've made so many bills trying to get to the feeling that I got from his. I've never gotten there. I've had fun.
Was an anomaly. I mean, I'll still say this. For a the original iteration with using all the factory locations in that car, which, by the way, I'm waiting for him the day before he decides to keel over and say that there was something else in the car and we didn't know about it. But from a factory location, I still say hands down today, there's probably not much, if ever anything's touched that car.
That thing
from that perspective. Incredible. I mean, it made you question, like, I should go take my highly custom car and go set it on fire because
probably
they just did stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it for me. And then just the fact that he invited me up, I got to meet all these different people. I learned so much. Scott Selvage took some time to show me how to do some basic tuning. I think he had a 7998 Alpine. And I don't know, man, it was just a good, grassroots event at his house. Great time. And I don't know. I think that's why I've always been fond of having get-togethers, hosting them or going to them, just because that's really how you get a lot of the new people into it. The guys who are kind of scared to come to a competition because they don't know what a competition is. They've heard all these things about competitions. So they'll come to get-togethers. And I like doing that just to kind of get hands-on with some of those guys. Not get handsy with some of those guys, but give those guys some hands-on tuning advice the best I can and try to introduce them into the world of sound quality like Kirk did for me that day.
Yeah.
Scott Buwalda, when did you get in? Was it around 80, 85, 86?
My first show was the Cannes Prelims 2, which is 1987.
Okay.
So,
oh God.
1987, 98, 1988, and then I went to college for a few years, so I kind of laid off, and I came back to Iasca in 92. And I had my aha moment in 94, so.
So as of right now, we have 266 years of experience in the room as of right now.
We can start a company.
Yeah, really.
Have any of you guys thought about doing this for a job? I don't know.
So, we talk about the aha moment. So my next question, to build upon the aha moment, what was your answer to that aha moment? So what I mean by that is you've experienced it. You're like, holy shit, there's a new world. There's a new thing that I have to go chase. What was your rebuttal to that aha? So what I'm getting at is, what was that pen to paper, your execution, your whatever, that the system and the install and whatever, what was that? What did that look like? And I guess we can start with Doug on that piece.
I mean, mine was just figuring out how to do those things. It was, okay, this was cool. How do you, and it wasn't just all about audio. It was, how do you put a TV in your car? How do you put a computer in your car? How do you do all this stuff? Because I've seen it, it's possible. I have no idea how to do it. How do you build your own spectrum analyzer? All those things were really interesting to me. So I just started tearing stuff apart and burning stuff up and, learning along the way. And, as I went to more shows and didn't get any trophies other than, I think I got dead ass last from George one time. Because that was a trophy he liked to give away.
Yeah.
Then I started figuring out how, how things sounded and why they sounded the way they did. And then just started, reading. That's what I'm always been big on, is reading and figuring things out. And just tinkered until I figured it out. And I'm still tinkering to this day and still figuring things out. And the more you learn, the more you realize, what you don't know. So it's, I haven't, rebutted it yet. I'm still learning.
Mr. Nick, what was your answer to that aha moment, like system-wise?
Well, it's kind of like Doug, when you listen to, Harry's car and you listen to Mark's Forerunner, it made me realize that there's a hell of a lot more I have to learn. And God bless Mark, because he was open enough and kind enough and nice enough to answer a lot of questions. And to this day, brother, thank you. I cannot thank you enough. Really appreciate it. And also making friends with Mark Fukuda, and even though Mark was a hermit back then, being at, his house or at Autographics, I would I go down there after hours, walk into the bay, and here's 10 people I know, and we're all sitting here watching Mark work and learning what Mark learned and was willing to share with us, which for us, it was like just watch what he was doing and it just execution wise. And then, learning from Dale Fontenot, because Dale had been building home speakers and amateur, but for 20 years by then anyway, and letting Dale teach me what he knew, and then going out and finding that all on my own, and met Doug and picked Doug's brain and just started reading everything that I could, and figuring it out. And that's what, what drove me was that aha moment. Like, well, if I'm going to get into this and I'm going to be able to compete, then here we go. I've got to be able to learn how all this works and how to execute it and how to actually tune a car. Oh, well, my God. And now look what it's got me.
Well, here's the deal. It's a good thing we didn't ask a bunch of bald people to hop on this call. Is it?
Damn.
That's not nice.
I think the skin to hair ratio is a little off on this call.
Our next t-shirts are going to be Charlie. Our next t-shirts are all going to be Charlie Brown t-shirts.
Is the only guy with hair, or one of the only guys with hair.
And a nice head of hair to go with that.
Jeff, what about you?
Okay.
What about you? What was your answer to that aha? Whether it be, like I said, whether it was a learning thing or your system. What was that?
So for me, it was a long process. So after meeting Jeff Riles, I had no clue of how to make my system sound as good as his. So I played around with a lot of different things, realized some very basic things about the car were fundamentally wrong. You always reading car electronics growing up and went to more and more shows. And like I said, met a different group of guys who were into competing a lot heavier than I was. And then I got to meet and become a MTX Thunder Force guy. And they paid for Mark and Jason to come out to our shop and do some real training with us in order to get the Thunder Force team up to par. So there was a lot of install training, a lot of sound quality training, things like that. But still, it's a water hose of information, right? So you're trying to take these week and a half, 2 weeks that Mark and Jason Plank are there with us. And I lived 50 miles away from this shop. So I'm having to commute 50 miles each way to come hang out with these guys that are more experienced than me. So finally one day, after Mark and Jason had been there and everything else, I met a guy at a IASCA show, Nick Scott. And he was like, do you have any of these CDs to help you? And I was like, what are these? That was when I first learned about the Auto Sound 2000 CDs. So I had CD 102 in my disc. And CD 102 goes through each track and it shows you what 3% distortion sounds like, what no distortion sounds like, and all that. I literally sat in my car for probably 2 months straight, EQ in my lap, going over everything I learned from Mark, everything I learned on this CD and everything else. And my guys around me, and I would always listen to their cars, but I was kind of timid to them in a bit because I still felt like I was the junior guy to all these guys. And I worked on my car, and it was time to go to this Hi-Fi Buy show. So I took my car there, and Nick Scott was the judge, and he got in my car, and he gets out, and he looks at me, and he goes, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah." "Why?" And he goes, "Just wondering." And he calls Terry Floyd over, and he's like, "Terry, come listen to something. I want to make sure I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing." So Terry Floyd gets in the car, and Terry gets out, and him and Nick walk away, and they go get Stuart Allen. I don't know if you guys know who Stuart Allen was. Stuart Allen was another local Georgia guy who was a really good sound quality guy. Bring Stuart back over. The Stuart gets in the car, and they get out, and the three of them are standing. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with my car? right? And then Nick comes over to me. He goes, dude, I don't know what you did to your car, but it is right. And I'm like, I didn't even know what to say. I just stood there for a second, and he was like, this is awesome. Like, this is awesome. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm finna win first place, right? Here comes Brantley Miller in my class. And Brantley Miller kills me by 32 points in inspiration. But at least I had the sound quality dialed in. I beat him in sound, but he killed me in install. And at least at that point in time, by using those tools and what I had learned from Mark and Jason and Scott Harris and all those other guys, was once you get an idea that there's, like Scott Buwalda said, once you understand that there's something, a true sound stage, depth, layering, and things like that, and once you get a grip that there's something out there besides stereo sound, and you figure out what frequencies on the EQ can make someone's voice go from sounding natural to sounding nasally and everything else, when you learn those intricate parts of the EQ, that for me was once I saw other people in my industry who, well, in the competition scene, who I looked up to and they were winning and kicking butt at competitions. When they got out of my car and Nick told me my car sounded and it was on, that was it for me. I could have died that day, man.
Yay.
I was good to go.
Mr. Scott, so like I said, after you had that aha moment, what was your rebuttal to that?
I think the big one for me was taking the EQ back from whoever I was giving it to. I was one of those guys that would go to the show with the car untuned and then rely on someone else, typically a factory guy, to help me tune the car. Would that be Larry Fredericks or Manuel Smith or whatever the case might be? And I think when I took the EQ back and I put it in my lap, that's when things started to change. And a whole lot of work. I can't underscore the amount of work that I had involved to learn the craft, to more than just an install, but to actually pursue the sound quality. A lot of work. But I think it started with stopping relying on other people and just relying on myself, and then learning as I went along, I guess. That was the big one for me.
Mr. Aaron, what about yourself? After you experienced Kirk's,
oh man, yeah, it wasn't like a kickoff of anything other than just to keep doing what I was doing. I guess it showed me what was possible, and with all the other input from the other guys there, it just showed me that you can have more than just a stereo. You can have something that rocks, that's fun, that images well. And I didn't leave there knowing all the different terms, but at least I kind of got the basics of left, center, right, because even before car audio, I never really had like a home audio system, never experienced anything like that. So car audio really was my first entrance into like a true high-end stereo. Then when you tell so now that I do like all this home audio speaker testing and stuff, and I tell people that, I know they kind of roll their eyes, but I don't think a lot of home audio people understand and respect just how much effort it takes to get a good stereo system in a car, and all the stuff that I've had to learn. When I go and test a speaker for home audio, I'm like, man, this is easy. Like, this is nothing,
Well, I will argue today that you get micro imaging, or I should say micro detail, and some of those, it's almost more emotional when it's right.
Right.
In a car that I've experienced, because I've been blessed to sit in front of, some of the best money can buy, and I say that whenever the car itself is right, and we all know who those cars are. There's a bunch of them, but they're gems. There's really nothing like it, and you're right. There always is that preconceived snobbery, right, from the home side, but that's because by majority they probably just correlate it with the guy that drives down the street and rattles the windows in their home, right?
Yeah. Or the Bose systems and the Cadillacs. Yeah.
So Chris, fashionably late, still love you. You're probably working your 36th hour straight. I get it. But so we kind of started a few questions here. Number one, what year-ish did you start? Then you might as well just go from there to parlay and talk about what was the aha moment for you. So the whether it was a system, a piece of equipment, an install technique, whatever, that made you kind of rethink what you were doing at the time. And then after the aha moment, what did you do to, what was your next steps? So,
I'm obviously a lot newer to this than all you guys. Y'all have done a lot longer than I have. So, probably 97, I met Mickey Bronis, and he introduced me to Wilson Adcock. I met Mickey at an event in Galveston, a USAC event in Galveston, Texas, and some triple point show down there. And I took my red Mazda RX-7 down there and got my ass handed to me. And it was a lot of fun. But I met Mickey, and he told me, man, you have to meet this cat. He's closer up to you. His name's Wilson Adcock, and he gave Wilson my number, and Wilson called me. I think it was a week later or something like that. And Wilson invited me down to his house. And I've been installing for a while at that point, but not a terribly long time. But I could put stuff together. Obviously, had learned some fiberglass stuff, and had seen the stuff that Gary Biggs was doing, and the stuff that Mark was doing, and and I was like, wow, this, I'm gonna just try my hand at it, and you just kind of go with it. At that point, it's just trial and error. And so I went down to Wilson's house, and he sits me down. He goes, man, you want to learn about music? And I was like, yeah. And sits me down in front of these 2 5-foot-tall obelisks that are home speakers that he built with a Focal 15 in the bottom and a Diapolito array with 7 on each side with the beryllium tweeter in the middle. And I mean, shoot, the cabinets were taller than me. At least that's what I felt like at the time. And a couple, and I'm just sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, whoa, this is what it's supposed to sound like. This is right. I've been totally going about this wrong. And that was really kind of the moment, where I was like, wow. And, Wilson really kind of took me under his wing for a long time, and from a sound standpoint, it wasn't until I met Doug Winker sometime later, and he came over and helped me fix my car when I first entered the expert class, sitting in that hot ass garage. Somehow we got that car turned sideways and got in there and got that mic array in there and made it all work. But it was definitely Wilson that that turned me on and got me straightened out, at least going down the right path. And then lo and behold, here comes Doug Winker and Nick Wingate some years later, and and I guess the rest is history from there.
So first off, I think
don't forget Mark. Don't forget Mark again.
I know. I'm not.
All right.
First off, I think we need to razz Biggsy for either not showing up or showing up even later than Pate. So if he doesn't show up at all, I think we're all going to hop on Facebook and spam his page. I think it's what
I'll see him tomorrow in Oklahoma City. I saw him on my way home tonight. I stopped by his shop, talked to him. So I don't know why he's not here.
I messaged him, and I know he saw the message because his little
I see the eyeball.
Yeah. He's probably watching. He is. He's listening to him.
Judging everybody.
Actually, I think he might still be he was doing an install on a radar detector system on a 2021 BMW M8.
Oh,
so,
he can have all that. I'm good.
Well, whenever you want to show up, you can.
Monkey Bunch, what was that? What was that rebuttal to that aha moment? So you mentioned the time spent with Clark. Was it just to try to repeat that thing that you experienced, or was it or did you go further than that?
It realigned my learning process. I always look at my life when I learn how to learn. I had learned some things up to that point just with a shotgun, learn this, learn this, learn this. But when I met Dave and Richard and Ellen and learned from them, and I met Manville at this show. I met a ton of people at this seminar in 91, and it taught me how to learn. And I started focusing on where to get real information and what really matters. You know, it's not, thank God we didn't have the internet forums back then, because we'd all been lost. You know, I mean, we had to actually go and research stuff, and we had to go find the information. And I attended all the Autosound 2000 seminars I could. Dave Navoni put me and Doug in touch with each other in 92, because we were doing a seminar in Dallas, and Doug had a TEF and I had a TEF, and I needed some things to help Richard get that seminar set up. And I think, Doug, you just had your surgery at that point.
Right.
Yeah. But so Doug and I teamed up there, and it just really taught me to focus on what really makes a difference. You know, don't worry about some guy that has his car and it sounds good and he says, oh, well, you got to do this and this and this. Maybe you do, but you got to understand human physiology and how the human hearing system works. And for God's sake, get out of the car and listen to a real reference system. If you don't do anything else, listen to a real nice sounding home or studio reference system. There's not a car ever built that should be used as a reference.
Nope.
You know,
Amen.
there's some that sound amazingly good, but you know, when you get in a real nice home environment or a studio environment, that's what you need to shoot for.
Yeah.
You know.
Amen to that, brother.
So,
And
you know, I shot at Chad Klodner's car, and I shot at the Grand National and a bunch of other cars trying to make mine sound that good. And then I finally learned, you know, nah, there's better. And nobody's ever achieved it. So, you know.
Hey, real quick, just so y'all know, Dan Merritt was supposed to be here tonight. He got his COVID shot today, and he's feeling under the weather. But I asked him when he got in. He got in 1986. He said that he moved to Texas and came across the Thunder on Wheels shows in 89, competed for the first time in 90, got top 5 in 92, in TOW and USAC that year at finals, and met Mark in 1994. So with him, if we include Dan, who's here in spirit, if he started in 1986, in total with Chris and Dan, we have 325 years of experience here.
Does that count total hours I've worked? Because it's way it's total hours I've worked.
Kate's done that this year already.
Exactly.
Well, I will volunteer in 1994 when I met Dan at a TOW show in Waco.
Uh-oh.
He beat my 4Runner.
No way.
Yeah. Well, he had like 155 dB SPL, and I did like a 125. So, you know.
See, there's the caveat right there.
Hey,
Mark,
but I've still got that second place plaque. I've still got it. It's one of the few that I actually kept.
You know, he has never told me he did a 155, and that's how he beat your ass.
Yeah.
Oh, you wait till I talk to him.
I think what it actually was, Nick, was he had the upgraded alternator and I didn't. So that 5 points is what did it.
That's what did it.
I'm supposed to ask Doug Winker about riding with Dan to spring break and the SPL alarm clock.
Oh. So, 1 year we went to Spring Break Nationals. So Dan's telling you that to ask that. I'm going to tell a story on him too, since he's, So we're driving to Spring Break Nationals, and he said, "Yeah, let's go to Spring Break." And so myself and Dan and James Cone packed up in his Isuzu Trooper, and it was Dan and I in the front, and James and all the luggage in the back, because the rest of the Trooper was stereo system. And we're driving along, and Dan and I are up front, and Dan used to call the woofer area the dog pound, and he had them on a separate switch, and this lighting would come up around the woofers. Well, we're driving along, and Dan looks back and notices that James Cone is sound asleep in the back of the Trooper. And so he pokes me on the arm and kind of gives me this thing, and he reaches down under his seat, and he's fumbling, and he pulls out a couple of ear muffs, and he hands me some ear muffs. He puts on some ear muffs, and James is just asleep. This glow comes up in the back, and James got the 155 dB alarm clock. And I think he probably bounced off every surface on the back of that truck and rearranged the luggage. And he didn't sleep again for the rest of the trip. But yeah, he moved pretty quick. Now I have to tell a story about Dan on that same trip.
Well, since he's not here.
Well, no, he's online.
No. Go ahead.
He's online.
Go ahead. Go tell all the stories.
So we drove straight from Dallas Fort Worth all the way through to Daytona, which I've unfortunately done a few times, and it's quite a long haul. And so that's 20 something hours. And when you get to Daytona, you're naturally tired. And Dan, go give him credit. It's his truck. He drove the whole way. So James and I had to ride. James got a little sleep, but we get to Daytona, and it's like, okay, get out the map. So the hotel's here. Well, I'm ready to go get to the hotel. No, we got to clean the truck. What do you mean, Dan? We got a show to get ready for. We got to clean the truck. And Dan chatted a minute ago. He can chat if I'm lying because I'm not. So Dan says, we got to clean the truck. Dan, we've been on the road for 26 hours plus we got to clean the truck. So he goes and we got to find a car wash. So we drive around and find a car wash. And this is before you can look one up on your phone. You just have to drive until you see car wash. So here we are in this trooper. We pull into the car wash and we unload all of our luggage and all of Dan's support equipment. And like zombies, we're cleaning the truck. Well, so Dan's like, okay, we're done. I'm like, oh no, Dan, we are going to clean the truck. And I got a towel and I rubbed inside the seat rail and said, Dan, this did not clean. We are cleaning the truck. We have to scrub the seat rails. We need to clean under the lip of the wheel well. Look at all this dirt from that 1,000-mile trip. Because if he was going to make me clean the truck after being awake for 24 hours, we were never going to have to clean the truck again on that trip. And eventually, we decided when Dan was as irritated as I was that it was time to go to the hotel. But I will never forget that. It's like, oh, we're exhausted. Let's go get to the hotel. No, we got to wash the truck.
Oh God!
And he was so serious. It wasn't a joke. That truck can't drive around Daytona Beach and not be show ready. So it was show ready. And then we put all our stuff back in and went to the hotel, and James mumbled the whole time about being woken up by the woofers. But yeah, that was a fun trip.
Oh God!
I actually have a similar story for Daytona. Do you guys remember the rocket science van from Speaker Warehouse?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Tommy was his name. We were staying at a Fleabag Motel in Daytona, 1991-92. And Tommy was down in the parking lot at 1:30 in the morning. Every alarm would go off.
Oh God!
Every alarm would shut off. 5 minutes later, he did that the entire freaking evening. Everyone hated the guy.
Oh Lord!
So, So Cliff and Erin and I kind of talked about, what this could be and what this should be as far as getting all you amazing people on here. And it's kind of a mixture of some BSing and some great storytelling. But it's also to potentially ask some of those questions that, I think we probably have all wanted to know over the years because, at the end of the day, a lot of you guys are guys that, and I'm sure I probably speak for Cliff and for Erin, people that I've looked up to and who I consider longtime friends with a lot of you guys that I've been honored enough to, and you guys have allowed me to sit in your vehicles and spent time talking to me. I mean, it's probably been damn near almost 2 decades for some of you guys. So the intent is to kind of ask some of the fun questions that I think that, either we've all have spoken in passing or at shows, but it just to kind of get other people some awareness and maybe some things that they've always wanted to ask. So one of the things I've always wanted to know with all of you guys who have, lived in the lanes and who pioneered was who was that who is that one car or that one competitor that you wish you could compete against again? So who drove you for you to be your best, right? So that person showed up in the show. You had to bring your A game.
Oh God.
That'll be good. That'll be right.
I saw everybody unmute themselves.
We've already spoken his name one time tonight. It's going to be two here in a minute.
Hey,
careful.
So if he made you bring your A game, then I like to know what.
No, I just like to see him get irritated and blow up. It was always hysterical when that happened. So, oh God.
So Mr. Eldridge, who was that person?
It's Chad Klotner.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Richard and I got started, watching, a bunch of guys back in the early 90s. But when I really got to competing, and in 1995 was the year it all kind of happened. And because I've been watching Chad with his Mustang for a couple of years. And, he lived in Dallas. I lived in Fort Worth. So I was able to listen to his car every now and then and talk with him. But in 95 was when the expert class was really born. I mean, that was the year where a lot of us jumped in the expert class. And Chad and I competed every week. Every week we're at a show. And, the best part about it was we were competitors, but we were friends. It wasn't about, hey, I'm going to beat that guy. It was about making your car sound better than his. And came down to it at the end. At finals, I asked a finals. He took SQ and I took SQ Plus. And Minio finished behind me in both of them.
Good for him.
And that was that. Klotner was always the one that I aspired to be better than. So there you go.
Hey, Mark, I got a message from Klotner the other day.
Yeah, I get a message about every couple months. He and I message back and forth. So
I made a post. I said, "Hey, man, you still got your Mustang together, so I can come take a look at it." He goes, "Anytime you want to come up to Round Rock, you can come see it."
Yeah, it's like 1,600 horsepower with no stereo in it.
Yeah, it sucks. I wanted to see it with the stereo in it again.
Scott, who was that person for you, man?
It's probably Mark Eldridge, the Michael Jordan of car audio.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I'm going to use that from here on. Scott, I'm going to use that.
If you want to compare me to Jordan, I'm honored.
No, I mean, the reality of it was in the mid 90s, you were killing it, and we all wanted to beat you. And it's, eventually we did. Not a whole lot, not often, but we did. I remember this is a little side story. Wilson Adcock came up to me. I think it was Perry or finals during the heyday of your campaign, probably 96,
I know
97.
this story already. Oh,
yeah.
God.
Wilson puts his arm around me. He goes, "Brother, you need to beat that MFer or I will." One of us needs to beat him. And and then he walked away. I was like, "Oh, okay."
A new story I hadn't heard yet, so there you go.
The reason why
hear his voice.
The reason why Black Betty exists is because of Mark Eldridge. I took it back to the shop for 3.5, 4 years, and I built a car that I thought could beat Mark. And Mark, you're the hub. We're just the spokes, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I second the motion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the God's honest truth, brother.
It's funny how I think everybody needs, and I know now we're just putting Mark on a pedestal and bronzing him, but I think everybody in their life needs that, because I think that's what makes all of us on this call who we are, because we see that almost unattainable goal, and then it almost drives us to go do that thing, right? It becomes a sickness.
So I'll jump in right after Scott, since it's going to just go and continue this building Mr. Eldridge's ego. So
Chris is tired of writing paychecks.
That's true.
Hey, do we all get free classes for this, Mark? Yeah.
There you go.
So being off the tree of Wilson Adcock, that was all he ever taught me was he goes, when you're going to do the expert class, your job is to beat Mark Eldridge, and when you beat Mark Eldridge, you've done the job right. So and I don't really have, I'm mentally wired. If you're going to do it, you got to do it, and you got to be the best at it, and you got to be the man. And so that's all I've ever known of how to do things. That's the way I was wired. So, from the word go, when the day that I jumped in the expert class, it was always about beating Mark. That was it. It's like, when you can beat Mark Eldridge, you've done something. And if you ain't beat Mark Eldridge, well, you ain't done anything. So shut your damn mouth until you beat Mark Eldridge. And then when you beat him, you better keep trying, because he's going to come back and try to beat you. So
exactly.
Every time.
And that's what I appreciate about all you guys, because I won a lot of trophies and stuff, but in that class or in any class, somebody betters what you're doing. You have to learn and advance what you're doing, or go away.
Yep.
Chad drove me initially, but then it was, Minio and Chad and Eric Stevens and a bunch of those guys, Holly Mungle and those guys from the day. And then it came around Nick and Scott and all the other guys in the expert class, and Steve Brown and some of those guys. And nobody knows it all.
When Mark said he was done, I was like, I don't really have anything left to do. I was like,
what do we do now?
I'm retiring too. I was like, Mark said he's I was like, well, shit. What am I doing now? I was like, well, so I retired. So it took a number of years and just building cars for guys to get to this point where, like, well, I guess I'll go to a show and compete again, because I'm like, I don't really,
well, I'm sorry to put that squelch on you there.
And it always has been. If you're competing at our level, it's always been Mark. So,
Jeff, what about you, good sir?
For me, it would have to be the early 2000s, and when Iasca introduced the street classes.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
So when they
Back to
introduced
basics. Thanks, Manville.
Right. So when they introduced the street classes, I originally built this one car for my now ex-wife, and it was fun. It was nothing super serious. Until 2002, when Scott moved into Street Expert with
the Ultimate. Was it the Ultimate?
Yeah, knew Scott for a long time. Saw him in the shows and everything else, and it was just one of those classes that Street Expert now gave you the same sound judging as regular expert class, but the install was knocked down. Right.
Still very nice. I think. And for the people who are listening on here, it's not like Jeff's talking about just a bunch of stuff thrown on with screws. These still were very well thought out, very well executed cars, just not to the holy shit bonkers. How did they make that?
Well, I don't know about that, Randy, because Scott's car.
I agree, Scott. Well, that's because they're talking
built
about
like a tank, right? So this is when Scott would go to a show. And Scott would use the stick to push his car like 20 feet, right? And my thing in my car was extreme factory appearance. All the vehicle space, minus the little bit of things and the integration part of it. Scott had liquid cooling in the car. He had, the everything, right? So anyway, for those 2 years of us going back and forth in Street Expert, that was another like come to Jesus for me on the level of competition you have to deal with someone who is a installation judge's nightmare, right? Who will suck every possible point out of the fact that his butt connector is exactly perpendicular to the body line of the vehicle. All his heat shrink is in the exact same orientation. And it just made you think about, like, there's a certain level of selling yourself to a judge, and then there was the Scott level of selling yourself to a judge.
Yeah.
And I think watching him do install for those 2 years and losing to him at finals in small margins for those 2 years caused me to go back and rebuild my car in 2003. I rebuilt the car and then lost. I mean, I thought I came to finals, went back and did all the little 1.1s, individual 100-watt monoblocks on every driver, redid the install, everything else, added Alpine F1 to my car. I'm like, I got all the good stuff now. I'm ready. I'm bringing my A game. And I get there, and he beats me in SPL, like 3 dB, and beats me in sound by like 8 points. And I'm just like deflated. And then I went back and I worked that entire, from finals until spring break. All I did was tune my car. I didn't change a single thing, right? Because typically you go back and start changing components. I'm talking Trapper Keeper 3-ring binder of listening to tracks, making adjustments from November to March for spring break, right? And this is if anyone ever asked me, what is the one show that you did good at that was the aha pat on the back for you? And it was Spring Break 2004, hands down. For me, this is when we did the ISQC sound challenge thing. And I killed my class. And then the top 30 round, I got second to Mark by 2.8 points or something like that. And Scott moved out of Street Expert that year. And this is when I got to compete against Doug Winker. He was Team JBL that year. So I went the entire season. I won spring break, got second to Mark at top 30 at spring break, won Still Valley in my class, got second to Mark again at Still Valley, won every show I went through that year, won slap finals, best of show, best install, won my class in Iasca, and beat Doug. So from 2001 to 2004, it was learning to be a showman in installation by Scott, right? It was learning all the install tricks. I remember Doug was real friendly, and Doug had this metal plate around his speaker, and Doug's
diffraction ring.
Yeah, this ring, this diffraction ring or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, I got like kick panels in my car, and this dude's got a metal ring to break up the sound waves as they come around. I'm just whatever, I'm just thinking to myself, here I am, some guy in his garage working at a shop. And
Doug, isn't that what you not to cut you off, but isn't that what you used to write your dissertation, your PhD dissertation?
No.
That
was just something I picked up in one of my classes. It was a trick from something they actually did on measuring really high frequency sound with microphones that were actually a little large for it, and it's a way to measure shock waves when you're doing nonlinear acoustics. Now, my dissertation was completely different, which I can go into, and the only reason I'm not is because that'll be a dissertation unto itself. No, the little ring thing was more of a weekend project.
So before I hop over to you, to Doug, and I think it's important to kind of come back to the Scott thing, because, I think as much as we all absolutely believe that, Mark was that person that is the Jordan of car audio, Scott absolutely, if Mark was Jordan, Scott could easily be Magic Johnson or that, whatever, at the time Jordan's nemesis was, because Scott is the king of detail. I don't think there ever will be. Well, I'll take that back. I think Brian might be taking a couple pages out of Scott's book, but I think Scott's the king of detail. Period.
Thank you, Brad.
I mean,
Appreciate that.
no ifs, ands, and buts. And I know, we talk about car audio and the sound piece, and there's no denying the skill and ability there. But from a level of detail, I doubt there ever is going to be another Scott in the sport. And if it is, that's going to be truly exceptional.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
It's the truth, man.
Means a lot.
Dr. Doug, what about you, good sir?
So my answer to that question. So there's someone I'll bring up, but then I want to after I answer it, I want to add something. Is most of my work in this, was not really campaigning a car. I was a judge for many, many years and was really involved in rule books and rules and ethics and judging, and then switched off into, supporting tuning cars, for Kicker. And then I was on Team JBL when I, competed. When Mark and Gary got on Team JBL, Mark called me and goes, "You ought to build a car. It'll be fun." And, so I thought, okay, I kind of know how this stuff works. I might as well build one. And so we built my car. But, my biggest contribution, I think, to this has been kind of on the other side of things. But when you go back to that one person that you want to compete against again, and this is a great time because I get to rebut something someone said on one of these other podcasts, is Robert Abels. Because Robert, I know was on a podcast a few weeks ago talking about beating me, and I want to just kind of set the record straight. There was a show at Sound Idea, and I competed with a car that literally, I don't remember how it sounded, but I know what the system consisted of, and I had no right even being allowed to enter, because I had 418s. Had a pair of 6.5-inch speakers behind my head and a pair of tweeters in the dash because I thought that's what I needed. So
damn right.
Just imagine the limitations of that system design. There was no EQ. No, there was an EQ, but it was a 7-band. So yeah, I had a lot of things to work with there. But the show was supposed to be an amateur-only show, and so I competed, and Robert Abels showed up in his Daytona, and I found out that Robert actually worked at a shop, but showed up and registered as an amateur because he didn't want to drive all the way home without competing. And so he registered in my class and won my class when he actually worked at a shop. And I truly was a, high school kid putting the stuff together himself. So I'd like to have a go again on that one. so that I could actually protest him and get him thrown out and get my trophy. That would be my other one. The other one I'll say is when I used to compete, I never beat Joanna Duncan. So that's another one I'll just throw out there. She was at every show. I'd show up with that, and she'd win. And there was a guy named David George, but if I had to go over it, it'd be with Robert, so I could actually go up and protest him. But and get my trophy, which I know he still has, and I still have my second place trophy. And that's been going on since the '80s, so there's a lot of bad blood there. But man. My biggest, as I said, you talk about who you compete against. My biggest thing was judging and tuning and all that type of stuff. That's what one of this was for me.
Mr. Nick, what about you, good sir? Who is that person, man?
God. Besides Mark?
Besides Mark.
Let me just say this real quick. Mark got me into this competitive side of it. He really did. He and Fotno, and I blame Fotno probably for the other side of it, which we won't go into at this moment. But Mark,
what's the other side?
The midget trafficking that they used to do.
Dear God, y'all have no.
I've heard stories.
Oh God, Mark was and still is a dear friend. He's one of my best friends in this world, and that friendship was formed from us competing against each other and always being parked damn near right next to each other and helping each other and having a great time competing against one another. And that was the fun side of it for me. And I would always want to try and best Mark. But There was another person who had a Trans Am, and he pissed me off royally at Daytona one year. And Mark knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And his last name was Adams.
Oh God, yes.
And Scott knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's a pizza delivery driver.
Yeah. And his what didn't stink. And he was the best thing, his car was the best on the planet, blah, blah, blah. And arrogant was not the word. And if he's watching this, I don't even know if he's still alive, but you were, I'm sorry. And you treated, and he did, and he treated people like crap. And I thought, you know what? I know what class you're in. Yeah, it's time to go do this. And that really and truly, I never had a chance to go up against him. But if I could go back and beat his ass, oh, dude, I would be so happy. It would make me so happy because I would like to go, you arrogant, you know what? Guess what? You freaking lost. And, yeah. Him.
Brother Nick, I would fly to your hometown and help you build the car to beat that.
So, and I know Scott would appreciate this.
Jim Adams was the biggest douche on the entire.
Wow.
Yep. And God. And there's a lot of other people that I would say, I would have liked to go back and beat their ass. And then I thought, no, I did. But yeah, Mr. Adams. Oh yeah. That, yeah. So there you go, Randy.
Yeah, well, let me jump in here real quick. Just talk about important people in the whole scheme of things. And Doug had brought up Robert, and between those two guys, between Doug and Robert, for how many years were one of you two guys with me at every show I competed at? I mean, whether it was Perry every year or finals or whatever else, it was either Doug riding with me or Robert riding with me or both of them, and you got to throw some kudos out there to the people that help you out. And those two guys have helped me as much, if not more than anybody else ever. So there you go.
It's pretty funny because, all the years that we all went back and forth, and the same guys that helped him, the same guys I recruited to help me all the years. If it wasn't for Doug and Nick, I wouldn't have beat Mark all those times.
Yeah.
So, you see, Mark's right. You look at the people that you don't win them on your own, man. You don't.
No.
And, I wouldn't be any. I wouldn't have won any of them. It wouldn't have been for Doug and Nick. Not a single time.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on behalf of Mr. Fontenot because Dale's not on here. But I can tell you the person that drove the first time, not the second, but the first time, Dale, to build the car that he eventually won Perry with was a gentleman that drove a Z28, a red one. Because the first Perry that we ever went to, Dale went down there and got his what handed to him, and it was not a pleasant experience. And Mark, and Scott knows this, and so does Jeff, how competitive that man was.
Mm-hmm.
And Minio made the remark about, what?
No, you keep saying his name. Stop.
I really think you
I can't help it. I'm sorry, but
this is like Baltimore. You don't say his
it's
name.
Voldemort.
I know it's
Voldemort.
Just like
Lord's name.
Harry
I
Potter.
understand
You
that.
don't say his name.
But that man, that gentleman,
Bless Nick.
made the remarks to him about how that's a really nice looking car. You really should go home and rethink this thing through, and maybe you need to find another hobby. That was the wrong thing to say to him. And his wife told me the story about all the way home from Perry. He talked about that man. And I'm not going to say what he said about that man. But he was determined that the following year that man was going to get his ass handed to him by him. And you talk about the dark side and going there, that got him to go there because, Chris sets the standards today for working your ass off to succeed and to achieve a goal. Dale was the one who first started it. And I know Mark did, and I know we all have. But when you talk about somebody that got driven, that man would be working offshore at a production platform 95 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana. And at 7:30 in the morning, he is calling me at work, talking to me about his freaking car and how he's going to beat that man's ass. And I'm going, aren't you offshore? Yeah. Aren't you? Shouldn't be. I am, but I'm also figuring out how I'm going to whip his ass. That went on for a year. And the year that he rode back into Perry and beat and Minio lost to him, and I think that's year he was second to Mark. I'm going to tell you what, that was the proudest day of that man's life, was to watch him beat that car. I don't think he was prouder of any moment in his life, except maybe the birth of his kids.
That probably is questionable. I mean, there's probably, other questions. So let's kind of hop over to maybe what is that one piece of equipment either that you still have that so what is that one piece of equipment that you have that you'll never get rid of? Erin, I'm gonna start with you.
I can tell you what Erin's is. It's ginormous and takes up his whole garage.
Oh, hold on. So what was the question? I got lost here just trying to keep my head down so I don't get jumped by any of these people that y'all are talking about. So I mean, it'd be all right if it was just one person, but y'all are naming like names of multiple people. They can catch me in a dark corner at night. It might be a problem for me. I'm not as surprised I used to be.
We got you, brother.
What is that one piece of equipment that you'll never get rid of?
Well, I've already gotten rid of it. But that's the same thing that Cliff was talking about. The Macintosh. No, the MCM or the MC 4000M. Gosh, What is it? The 6-channel, big 6-channel sucker. That thing. I wanted one for probably 10 years. I finally lucked into one. Had it for 3 months. Fried it. Had to send it out to California. $1,200 or $1,300 in repairs later. I get it back. Something else kind of finicky happened with it. It wound up not being the amplifier. It wound up being the DSP instead, but it scared the crap out of me. And I thought, I don't make enough money to have old school stuff. So I actually just wound up just selling it. I was like, I can't do this. I can't play this game. I'm just too scared. But if I could get that back and just like hanging on the, you know what I mean? Like if I were a rich dude, just hanging on the wall, keep it plugged in like a nightlight or something, I would do that.
Well, you almost had that when you fried it. So you could have
had it.
Dude, I think I cried multiple times. Yeah,
backlight it and call it done.
I could have. The Scott had the Scott. You had the big 2 channels. What were they? The MC like 6 something 3.
602 TMs.
Yes, those. I would love to have those, but they're like unicorns. And if you do see them come up, people want mad money for them. And again, I don't have enough money to afford old school gear like that. So I'll stick with the newer stuff.
He's got his hidden away in a car somewhere. Nobody knows where it is.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. Nobody has a clue. And it probably still works.
I mean, the car is still using the MCC 602 TMs.
Yeah.
And the car is in Holland right now for the last 14 months.
It's in quarantine.
Yeah.
Quarantine. COVID quarantine.
That's right. God.
I had this brilliant idea to go to the AMA finals last year, and I'm still waiting to go to the AMA finals. So
wow. Yeah.
So are they.
Yeah. So Scott, what about you? What's that one piece of equipment that you'll never get rid of, man?
So I came from the early to mid 90s school of thought that you had to change your car every year to make it competitive. And
that's still prevalent today.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I bought into the idea that brand names made a difference. So I would have, in 1995 was Rockford, 96 was someone else, 97 was someone else. So I never really fell in love with a piece of product until the MCC 602 TM came out. And I've got 4 of those in my car. That is the product, and I still own that. It's still in the car. Those amps are 15 years old.
Yep.
And they're still phenomenal. Probably the best I've ever heard.
I would agree with that. Jeff, what about you?
So the very first DSP I ever put my hands on, had no clue what it was, because back in the early 90s, crossovers were this big, 10 channels, you had separate EQs and everything else. And I went to a different stereo shop that I didn't even work at, and they were an Alpine dealer. And they had this complete system, Digimax.
Oh, man.
I'd never come across it before, didn't know much about it. And it was a digital crossover. That's all I knew. It was a digital crossover, and it did something else that I didn't quite understand, which was time alignment back then. And I bought it, had it for probably 4 months, could never understand exactly how to use it, got rid of it. Right? Went back old school, analog processors, audio control stuff. So now I've gone back and collected a complete Digimax, well, almost complete Digimax system. So I have the 7618 cassette player, I have the 3681 crossover, digital crossover with time correction, and I have 5959S CD changers, everything. And I'm building a retro install in one of my preludes. So
please tell me you're using FlexStone.
FlexStone for sure.
Yeah. So
FlexStone.
for
I
micro
got some
skills, it
tweed.
definitely
I got some
improved.
tweed. I'll send you.
Jeez.
I got a whole bunch of one of the, and the upstairs the upholstery shop. I'll send some to you.
And some mirrors, some doubled mirrors. Make sure you do
Mirrors.
that. Maybe some neon, some true
Some
neon,
neon.
some true neon.
Mm.
Eldridge,
some
what about
sands
you,
of
good
time.
sir?
Equipment I won't get rid of.
Yeah.
My
Probably
gears.
all those hidden
Yeah.
black boxes
So,
that
you
were
know-
in his truck.
Yeah.
Were those the ones that fell out of the truck or the ones that stayed in the truck?
You know, I've never really had a piece of equipment that I look at and go, I'm never, ever, ever going to get rid of this. It's the ears.
Oh, my God.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow, look at that.
Oh, that's just wrong.
What the hell?
Where in the hell? Oh, my God.
Come on, man.
Sorry,
But,
Mark. Go ahead.
It's all about the music, and it's all about how it sounds. And for me, I guess the piece of equipment I'd never get rid of are my Genelec monitors, because I got them.
Knew that was coming.
Because I have my big monitors and I have some other speakers, and I like the way they sound better. But the Genelecs I can always go to with a new recording and determine exactly what it sounds like and figure everything out. And then I can take that and move on from there.
Sure.
So, if you don't know what the music sounds like, nothing else matters. There's not an amplifier or a pair of tweeters going to help you if you don't know what it's supposed to sound like. So,
True.
For me, it's a reference system.
Yep.
There you go.
Chris,
So
what
I got
about you?
That and the little Radio Shack mini amplifiers for troubleshooting. I've got like 6 of them. Jeff knows what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Check that out. Look at that guy.
All right.
Young you are.
Now let me tell you the story on this real quick, because I was in the
Oh,
Texas
shit.
Air Guard. Okay, this won't take long.
Oh, make it long.
And I had
That's
talked
fine.
to the wing commander beforehand. I said, "Hey, we're doing a photo shoot on my Forerunner, and I'd like to have it in front of the airplanes and get a picture of the truck with the C-130 in the background." So we did the photo shoot all day. Get on base at 4:30. Get the truck out there. Well, they have a shift change for the security police at 5 o'clock. So we're out there taking pictures of my Forerunner in front of the C-130, and they came and arrested us because we weren't supposed to be there. The people that came on at 5 didn't know we were supposed to be there.
Wow.
So they hauled us in, and took about an hour and a half to get the wing commander on board to get it straightened out. But yeah. So I was not arrested, but yeah, I was
He was in
detained.
the brig.
Detained very shortly after that picture was taken.
Wow. You weren't smiling then.
No, not for a few minutes. No.
Yeah.
Chris, what about you, good sir?
So this will be my last thing. My wife's informed me I have to go eat dinner because occasionally I do come home.
Whatever.
I don't know that there's a piece of equipment that I've ever kept that I just have to have. I agree with Mark. and Scott's correct. Whatever's cool and whatever's hot is, I know that damn car won't leave. I'm stuck with it again. So anyways,
just when you thought you were out, you pulled you back in.
I know. I sold it and it's still in my shop. Anyways, but I very much subscribe to the deal that there's nothing old that's as good as the stuff that's out now. And I think that Scott will agree, having known what he just got in and what I've had at my house for quite a few months now, that there's just so much phenomenal gear out there now that's I think so advanced that technology has come a long way, especially when you come to amplifier design and speaker design. And there's just I've got some great Lunar amps that I collected. It cost me a bunch of money to buy people's collections to get 3 stupid amps, and I had them rebuilt by Kenny, and they sound unbelievably good. I mean, they've had everything done to make them phenomenal, and they're out of their 3 L2200s. And I got that audio wave amp in that I just got in. That Scott just got some in as well. And I'll tell you right now, that audio wave amp smokes those amps. It's not even remotely close. And I've tested everything out there that's worth testing. And I don't get hung up on gear anymore. I used to be a big Macintosh head unit guy, but there's just nothing that everything that's just phenomenal and new. You can just, there's just so many awesome options out there. People look at the head units and head units like, oh, we don't even need head units anymore. You can use an Astel and Kearns SP2000 player, and it's just like, blows everything away. So I've never really gotten hung up on the gear thing. There were times I believed that I had to have Macintosh head units and had to have this piece or that piece. But, really and truly, if there's anything that I seem like I can't get rid of, it's that damn Civic. I sold it to him, and he's like, "Well, here it is. You're gonna run it." I was like, "Oh God, great! That's what it is." So,
next time you need a better contract.
At least I didn't have to really rebuild most of it this time. David Cruz rebuilt most of it this time. I just had to chip in here. I just had to chip in at the end and get it over the finish line. No, but
Mr. Nick,
all right, fellas, I gotta go eat dinner. I appreciate you.
See you, Chris.
You guys
see you, brother.
I'll see you all real soon. So,
Yeah, man.
All right,
Have a good one.
Bye.
Mr. Nick, what about you, good sir?
There's a piece of equipment that I have, and then there's pieces of an equipment that I have. The equipment there's a piece that I won't get rid of. It's an Adcom 4702. It's always just been one of those things that I've kept. Don't ask me why. I never built an install with it. It was sent to me by Adcom to evaluate, and it never left the house. I thought it was really cool because it's the only car amp that I know of ever that had an external power supply, and then it had the output devices, and the output devices was 48 inches long. I was like, oh yeah. Mark, if you've never seen one, you ought to go tear into it and look at it if you ever get a chance. It's amazing.
Was it a Pass? Was that when Pass was doing?
Yeah, it is a Nelson Pass Aleph 30. Is exactly what it was that he hot rodded, and he designed a 12-volt power supply for it, and gave it an umbilical cord, and it was external. It was just heater and shit. Most impractical damn thing you ever seen in your life. It was stupid. But I have pieces of the periodic membranes out of my Mitsubishi that Mark built for me. And don't ask, it's a sentimental thing because I still love the sub bass in that car. I've always thought it was some of the best sub bass I've ever heard. And it's just like, you know what? When we tore it down and tore it apart, I'm keeping this. This is stupid sentimental shit. I don't care. This is always something that I've always thought, yep, this was way cool. And yeah. Other than that, no, I haven't kept anything but those two things.
Mr. Doug, Dr. Doug, what about you, good sir?
So if you ask my wife, she'd say all of it. There's this office there's an attic attached to it that's I'd say it's a small attic. She'd say it's too large, but it's where all the audio equipment is. And I've got way too much of it, but I need to go through it. I think, yeah, Nick's seen it. But so I ran in there, and actually, I'm going to do show and tell. The one thing I won't ever get rid of is my TEF 20. Not that I know if this even still works, but
it does. You can use it.
No, I understand that, but the ICs always like to come out, so you have to go in and reseat them because they're actually socketed ICs on them. So if yours doesn't work, that's an issue. But there's other analyzers that I use now that do the same thing that are a lot easier to use than a TEF 20 and DOS software. But there's things the TEF does that other analyzers still don't do. But the reason that one's sentimental for me is it opened my eyes onto how things worked. You know, when you start looking at things in the time domain and the frequency domain and understand how that goes together, then you got to learn a lot of other stuff to go along with that. And so there's sentimental value attached to it from what I learned from it. Plus, it was really expensive, and back then I had to save up a ton of money to get it, and almost broke myself. Yeah. And then I bought it, and it's like, okay, now I got to keep saving to get a microphone. But I had it, but I didn't have the microphone. So it was one of those things that was a long goal to get, and so I'll always keep that.
Awesome.
Hey,
I got one more to bring up real quick, since we're all SQ guys here. Remember Alma's Bronco when we did it with the kicker stuff, and it had the 48 subwoofers in there?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've still got the delay that Richard and his guys designed to delay all those subs to align them. Microphone. I've still got that delay. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey, Doug, your wife is texting me. She's asking you to check your phone.
Yes.
She wants me to tell everyone, she said, damn straight, she was almost killed the last time she was in my attic.
All right, so I know we're starting to go along here, but one last question. I think I've interviewed all you guys, but one that I want to ask here: what was your favorite, I guess, social forum in car audio? What has the most memories for you? I know we had the car sound forums, we had rec.car audio back in the day. We had what was your favorite? What did you get into?
Elite Car Audio was mine. I missed that forum. I mean, there were some Yahoos on it, but ECA back in the day was the jam, man.
It was a lot of fun. It really was. There was some great people on there, and then we had Yahoos on there that didn't know sheep shit from wild oats.
But that can be said everywhere. I mean, I think,
but even more so, and I don't have to tell you, the 4 Yahoos I'm talking about right now, and I don't have to go there.
Well, but everybody on Facebook is a genius. So, I mean, we got much better now.
I don't even go there right now. I don't. But yeah, I agree. I agree, Randy. For me, I agree.
Yeah, it would have been car sound forums for me for sure.
Yeah, car sound for me also. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually funny when I used to go back and try to find out information, like 2007, 2008, 2009. I used to go to the car sound forums, and Mark, you had a sub forum there, I believe.
Right.
And I used to cruise that thing all the time, try to get information. A couple others had, Doug may have as well. I can't remember. It seemed like there was a couple other pretty big hitters had sub forums there that I used to go and
Richard and Navoni had.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was pretty awesome.
So I have one quick question, and then I'll leave you guys alone. And it's really for Eldridge and for Scott. And I already probably know the answer, but I'm just interested to know if you had to choose. And I'll start with Mark. If you had to choose between to buy, let's just say you no longer owned either the 4Runner, which obviously you don't own, and the NASCAR that you still own, but let's just say you didn't own either of them, and the opportunity, cash in hand, to go buy one or the other, which one would it be?
Oh, it'd be the Cup car, hands down, in a heartbeat, because and this was a discussion that Richard and I were having many years ago. It's like in the mid 90s, late 90s, maybe, about what would be the ultimate car to build for sound quality. And he made the statement, well, a NASCAR Cup car. And I was like, that's a rattle trap. And he said, yeah, but there's nothing in it. There's a roll cage and outside body panels. And you can build everything else you want. You can put the speakers where you want. You can build the panels the way you want. You can do anything you want in that car. And that never left my brain. And then when I was at CES 04 and talking to Todd Goodnight with Sirius, and he was giving me grief about the 4Runner. He said, man, when are you going to sell that 4Runner and build something else? And I looked at him, I said, when you sell me a Cup car. And he said, hang on a minute. And he went over and talked to Roger Venewald, their car guy, their show car guy, and came back a few minutes later and said, where you want it shipped? And I was like, what? And a month later, I had a Cup car in my garage. And I had to pay for it, but that's how I got that Cup car. And I was like, yes! So that's where it started, But yeah.
Yeah.
So Scott, if you had a choice, same scenario, you sold Betty, no longer have it, and obviously you don't have the white 240. If you had an opportunity to buy either car, which one would it be?
Or the blue one, and they're all the same car, by the way. But.
No, I get it.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the black car kind of put the period at the end of the sentence for me. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd buy a house instead of that car.
Good answer, Scott.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The white car is still my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
It was Mark. I remember Mark's. Quite a few guys on this call, but I remember having Mark's 4Runner on my wall. I remember having Scott's 240 on my wall. I remember having Smith's. It was at the Accord on my wall. So yeah,
Randy had a very weird room. Just
it was weird.
Yeah, instead of like pinup girls, he had pinup cars.
Bunch of dudes staring at me. It was weird.
Yeah. Did you have Erin Hardison's 2006 Honda Civic on your wall as well?
You know it, brother.
Sweet.
Hey, I understand Wilson had my 4Runner on his wall.
Yes, he did.
Nice.
He was throwing shit at it. I knew what he was throwing at it.
Target practice.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Go ahead.
I'm gonna tell a real quick story. Doug was talking about judging, and everybody knows that I split time between judging and competing because I love both. But I've got to tell this war story with Doug. Doug and I were asked by Mr. Feltenberger to judge a show at Texas Stadium. And I was there. Doug was there. Mark, you were there. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Fontenot brought the Thunderbird out. And I'm not competing that day. And so James says, Nick, you're the expert here. You and Doug judge the expert cars. Okay, sure. So we judged Marks, and it was great, and we loved it, and we scored it well. And Doug, being Doug, goes, hang on, I've got a really good idea. Okay. So Doug goes and grabs additional score sheets. He comes back to the car, and I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, just shut up. Folds them up, puts them in his hand. We go and do the routine with Dale, and we get in the car, and Doug goes, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to judge the car accordingly, but then we're going to judge the car a different way. I went, okay, I'm all for this. Let's go. So, because anybody that knows Dale is like, he's dead serious about this crap. I don't care what. And we decided it's time that we should have a little fun. So we proceeded to score Mr. Fontenot's car, and it is awful. I mean, it is terrible. And we are making remarks. Who in God's name tuned this? They are silly. For the love of God. Oh, Jesus. Imaging. One of them was, if I remember correctly, it was GTFH, which I don't have to tell you what that means. I mean, I think he scored a 45, if I remember correctly. And Do you remember the names we signed as judges, Doug?
I don't know, Beavis and Butthead or something. All I know
Beavis
is
and Butthead. Yep.
Yeah, all I know is we filled that out, and then the pink sheet was on the back that the competitors all got, right? Well, we knew they were going to hand out the competitor sheets before the things were done. So Dale goes up there, and they're handing out the pink sheets, and Dale gets this pink score sheet. You should go home. This is a joke. Pick another hobby.
Pick another hobby.
Have you had your hearing checked lately? All these wonderful, wonderful sentiments were handed back to Dale. We made, his other score sheet went through, and he ended up doing quite well, and the car sounded great, but he didn't see any humor in anything. And he was waiting for us, and he really wanted to talk. And then we said, Dale, you just won. He won. Dale, you won. I don't care. Your comments are terrible. But Dale, no. But you said I should pick a new hobby. Dale, it was a joke. I don't find it funny at all. He was so deadpan upset. He didn't see any of it as funny. Then he got his real score sheet, and he still didn't find it funny.
We did.
But Nick and I had a blast with it.
We did.
All right.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to do this again sometime, guys. I know it's getting late for everybody, but I appreciate everybody taking their time to hang out and do their thing, and everybody who watched and participated and everything else. And we'll definitely do this again sometime.
Thanks for doing this, Klifton.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I miss all of you guys.
You guys are awesome. Dig it.
Man, it's really good to see everybody. Scott, good to see you, brother.
You too, bro. Does anyone else feel like this is like the Brady Bunch, like eight cars?
Oh, it is.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
notice I'm Alice.
Right.
I'm just here to clean up y'all's mess, right? All this Minio stuff.
No comment.
Yeah.